Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and all the great people on the other side of the screen. I'm happy to greet you again in my reading room. I am Osnier, and what I'm doing here in the, inside of my young time Mazda is I'm reading my articles about cars and science, and I hope that you feel entertained. Today, by the way, we will do some economics. But this will not be kind of boring economics you have in your school whatsoever. This will be kind of interesting stuff. So, this will speak a lot about dreams. The article is entitled, Crossing the Dream Point. Will it ever be rational for us to buy a supercar? Let me begin with an anecdote. Imagine a driving school. The instructor asks a young driver, "You see a girl and an old woman suddenly appearing on the roadway in front of you. What will you hit?" The young driver gives this a nervous thought and decides that the old woman is at dusk of her life, while the girl has years and years ahead of her, so I will hit the old woman. The instructor looks shocked and confused. "You should hit the brakes." As paradoxical as this may sound, both answers are rational. Both are rational from the individual perspectives of the young driver and the instructor. This does not mean, though, that both are ethical. To develop this argument further, the young driver seems to expect that his or her answer will be approved by the instructor. Above all, the driver's incentive resides in gaining the instructor's approval. And this is the point where we can apply the rational choice theory developed by economists to explain how and why individuals take decisions as they do. You may have heard of Gary S. Becker, a guy from Pottsville, Pennsylvania, who studied in Chicago and liked economics. He also liked thinking rationally, like Descartes, whom I introduced in one of my articles. Unlike Descartes, however, Gary attempted to explain social life, not nature, through a bunch of sophisticated calculations. He got so consumed by this idea that the whole of his life was filled with research, lecturing, and similarly boring academic stuff. Gary started with the assumption that all people act rationally all the time. Both you and I are utility maximizers. We seek to get as much as possible with as little effort as possible. The maximal gain for the minimal price. Therefore, our society functions as it does because large groups of individuals take the actions they find best at certain moment. Thousands of individuals act similarly in similar situations because this is rational. Gary wanted to build a model which can explain how people engage in various activities or pursue different goals. What motivates them to do so? What do they find rational? What do they expect to achieve? He arrived at the conclusion that people calculate in their minds the likely costs and benefits of every action before deciding how and when to act. In other words, you and I are motivated by a number of material and non-material things, which also include the necessity for self-expression. We choose the best way and the best time to get access to these things. The best way to be satisfied. But we are limited in our actions. We need resources. We also need to understand that we will never have complete information about all the costs, benefits, and troubles on the way. We should also be aware of alternative courses of actions. In a nutshell, Gary stated that it is these "I want this badly" feelings which motivate us to act. Our actions come with cost, the full gravity of which we can never predict. Assessing this rationally, we decide whether to do anything, and if so, what and when. Developing his argument further, Gary faced the problem. What about human emotions? What about our emotional actions? Are they rational? Are they predictable? The answer was yes. Both you and I enjoy experiencing approval, recognition, renown, love, and surely the weight of $100 banknotes in our pockets. Just as we understand that some non-material benefits are at stake, our consciousness and intelligence enter the stage. Needless to say, both consciousness and intelligence are also rational beasts, focused on utility maximization. Moreover, whatever decision we adopt, whatever action we take, it will always come with physical and emotional losses and gains. Gary concluded that our incentives to act have a lot to do with the need for social approval and appreciation. We are not only anxious to satisfy ourselves when pursuing our goals, but we also seek positive feedback from the people we respect. In other words, the social appreciation of our actions is also one of our goals, whether we understand this or not. It is a powerful multiplier for everything we plan to do, as well as for everything we have achieved so far. In this light, purchasing the all-new Dacia Sandero with air conditioning and heated seats may be a very satisfactory thing, especially when you live in the Cornwall countryside where all your neighbors drive Reliant Robins, Morris Marinas, Yugos, or Lada Rivas. Your own traveling comfort along with your social status will skyrocket. Alternatively, stealing the Lamborghini Gallardo from an official dealership may be no less rewarding when you aim to be noticed by local mafia. Impressing the mob, taking Don Corleone's daughter for a joyride, and selling the Lambo on the black market afterwards. This pays off. In a word, every one of us calculates individual costs and benefits every time. But we are not alone in our calculating costs and benefits in a unique way. Numerous individuals have similar goals. Numerous individuals think and act similarly in similar situations. In a family, in a gang, in an army, in a police department, in a corporation. Because there always is a certain balance of costs and benefits which sounds rational to all of us. And this generic rationality of thoughts and actions makes our society look as it does. Gary was very happy arriving at these conclusions. In turn, the people and institutions he respected were no less happy. In 1992, the Nobel Committee evaluated Gary's discoveries and decided that he was worthy the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences. In 2007, US President George W. Bush awarded Gary with the United States Presidential Medal of Freedom. And in 2014, the New York Times described Gary as the most important social scientist in the past 50 years. Such was the outcome of Gary's individual life choices. Professor Gary S. Becker from the University of Chicago. But let us take a step back and give a second thought to the Lamborghini Gallardo. Let us assume the supercar is not stolen, but legally bought at an official dealership. Bought by a not that rich bloke who decided to use it as a daily drive. Is it rational? Can it ever happen? The paradox is that it can happen, and it is rational. You may have heard of Richard Jordan from Dallas, who decided one day to sell everything he had, take a bank loan, and buy the black $180,000 Lambo. Because only the supercar and an open road could make him feel happy and satisfied with his life again. Imagine a typical and perfect American family. A loving couple, raising kids in a beautiful house, somewhere in the pastoral countryside. Happiness, welfare, love. And now imagine that this never happened. There were no kids. The man's fiancée decided to break up with him. The newly bought house became a burden. That's how Richard's story started in 2006. Richard was so frustrated that he made a very unusual but much needed decision to cure his soul. He left his troubles behind and took an adventurous break. On July 4th, 2007, on his personal Independence Day, Richard bought the Lamborghini Gallardo coupe, one of the most expensive cars on the market, and started driving it. For more than a year, he constantly moved from place to place, lived in motels, and spoke to dozens of new people. He crossed the U.S. 3 times and completed journeys from Ohio to Colorado, to Texas to North Carolina in about 48 hours. He collected 53 tickets for speeding. He covered around 1,100 miles in a year in the supercar, which wasn't properly garaged or meticulously maintained. Once again, mates, 100,000 miles in a supercar, which other owners are often afraid to touch. My world will never be the same again. But Richard literally had no other home except for the Lambo. Sure, he had a lot of adventures on the way. In Ohio, for instance, he was confused with Moby in a strip club. The club manager was so happy to host Moby that Richard was provided with champagne for free. In Indiana, he was detained for carrying a handgun in the supercar. To make things worse, the Lambo's registration had expired by 1 day. The adventure ended well, but the release cost Richard $25,000. Let us return to rational choice theory now. It also explains Richard's decisions and course of actions. His incentive after the breakup with his fiancée was to restore himself psychologically. Therefore, he opted to purchase the Lambo, which means pay the cost, to fight frustration and enjoy freedom, which means achieve the individual benefit. Nothing else would bring him more satisfaction than driving the supercar on an open road and meeting new people. Actually, Richard himself confesses, quote, "That was the one thing that felt like it worked for me," end quote. The Dacia Sandero, despite being less financially burdensome, would never succeed with this task. Moreover, Richard was noticed by the media. For instance, journalists from the Jalopnik interviewed Richard and covered his story in detail. His adventures continue to be actively discussed by its readers, where his story has notched up around 1 million views, 700 comments, and 11 recommendations. Some of the commentators stated that they would do the same in similar circumstances. The social attention and petrolhead approval, which Richard capitalized through his actions, also became a part of his soul cure. Richard might have not foreseen this directly, but apparently he expected this to happen. And I bet he enjoys the attention and approval today. Such was the outcome of Richard's individual life choice. Richard Jordan from Dallas, who planned to set up a shop after his journey and craft custom motorcycles. Now, you may ask, what is the overall moral of this article? My answer is, live your life the way you like it. Some brainy professors will always find it to be rational. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being with me on this day. I hope you liked that article, and if you did, just consider subscribing to this channel or having a look at my books, the books of such articles, linked below. And thank you for being with me. See you next time. Have a nice day.